Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight. We'll look at what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. Now, today I want to talk about a phenomenon that's been taking place over the last 10 years. And that anything that occurs that the globalist establishment doesn't like or cannot control is blamed on Vladimir Putin and Russia. Now, it all really took off in 2016 when Donald Trump was unexpectedly elected the 45th President of the United States of America. Immediately the liberal establishment and the lapdog media went into a frenzy that the only reason that Trump had won the election was Russia has interfered on his behalf. Now, despite numerous investigations, no evidence has ever been found that Russia interfered in that or any other election, and that includes Brexit referendum in the UK. None of any of the allegations of Russian hacking ever produced any evidence. However, blame Vladimir Putin and Russia is now the globalist default position, and it's amplified by the media when things do not go their way. It's Russia did it, Russia did it, Russia, Russia, Russia. Now, currently Europe is in turmoil, from the European Commission down to individual countries. And it's not just those countries of the EU, but they range from Armenia and Georgia in the Caucasus to France, Ireland, and the UK in the West. It's politicians, politics and systems, they're falling apart, and the politicians claim it's not their fault, nothing to do with them. The one common denominator they cite is Russia and how it's blamed for all their woes, misfortunes that are engulfing all parts of Europe. Now let's start in the Caucasus in Georgia. It's a nice little country. I've visited a few times. It's a great national rugby team, because rugby's their national sport, the Lelos, and they also produce great wine and brandy, and it's also probably famous for being the first country to experience a Western financed and organised colour revolution, the Rose Revolution in 2003, which paved the way for many others, including the Orange Revolution in the Ukraine in 2005 and the Maidan again there in 2014. Now in Georgia, the Americans and Europeans are actually involved in an attempt to unseat the democratically elected Georgia Dream Party's government in circumstances that are genuinely baffling. I mean, the EU had previously frozen the accession process for Georgia in July of this year, and the Georgian government's decision not to try and resume negotiations before this indefinite freeze is lifted caused the EU significant concern. I mean, the current president of Georgia, Salome Zurabushvili, is in fact a French-born diplomat, and she seems intent on remaining in office until she can organise the scheduled regime change, despite the fact that her constitutionally allotted term is coming to an end in a ceremonial Rome. Now, she's widely praised in EU capitals and in Washington as a modern-day Joan of Arc, but as far as I can see, the only thing she has in common with the Maid of Orleans is that who was burned at the stake for being a witch, is they're both French-born and had serious delusions about the amount of power they had. Plus, I don't think Salome will go down in Georgian history like Joan of Arc did in France, but her career is likely to go down the toilet. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund my channel and my website, SCOBRICSinsight.com, to further develop it. You can do this by making a small donation, which is done by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Everybody who does donate gets a personal thank you from me. Now, let's move on to the Ukraine. From the start of the conflict, it's been obvious to anybody with an IQ above room temperature that without the direct active involvement of NATO troops, there's no way that the Ukraine is going to win. It was obvious even back in the days of the Istanbul agreements, which Boris Johnson, the US useful idiot, was sent to Kiev to meet with the Kiev cokehead to scupper. Now, as his electoral term has passed, Zelensky clings to power. He's lauded as a hero by his many admirers in the West who actually claim to support democratic values, but they're nothing of the kind. I mean, from the outset of the conflict, it's been evident that if there was no NATO direct involvement, Ukraine would have lost already. Setting aside the significant human toll of lives lost, injuries sustained and cities destroyed since the war began in 2002, Ukraine is an economic basket case and the poorest country in Europe, even poorer than Moldova now. Despite this, the US and European leaders keep encouraging this thing to continue. Now let's look at France. In France, the government of Michel Barnier has collapsed due to his efforts to navigate a highly unpopular budgetary plan. I mean, the plan would necessitate a challenging combination of tax increases and spending cuts, with it's currently being considered by the Parliament without a vote. Now, one of the key factors contributing to his failure is he followed the same anti-democratic policies and tendencies of his previous employer, which was the European Commission. Also reflects the growing appeal of the so-called far-right Front National under Marine Le Pen, as well as a surge in populist parties across Europe. Now, these parties are expressing their frustration with the failure of the political class to address the current moral and economic issues. Now, let's look at Germany. The Rainbow Coalition of Olaf Scholz has been mired in controversy as the irreconcilable differences emerge regarding the spending and provision of financial and military support for the Ukraine. I mean, Germany is facing a challenging fiscal environment during its collapsing economy. It's now far less competitive than the US or even the average Eurozone country. I mean, the significant rise in energy prices was had a seriously adverse impact on Germany. It's pretty obvious that it doesn't make financial sense to stop buying cheap Russian pipeline gas, which is the backbone of the German economic miracle in the 2000s, and then move to buy American liquefied gas, which there was no infrastructure for, at 2 to 3 times the price of Russian gas. I mean, you've got the car maker Volkswagen, the legendary company, so now it's plans to close at least 3 factories and make tens of thousands of staff redundant. The chemicals giant BASF has upped sticks to both China and the USA, where energy costs are cheaper and their main customer base are. Now, everybody knows that the media will not admit that the US blew up the Nord Stream gas pipeline. The official line is, maybe it was the Ukrainians and maybe it was Russia's to blame. Now, in the UK, energy bills are some of the highest in Europe. The government blames Russia while its insane green policies drive up prices because subsidies to so-called renewables add huge amounts to household bills. Industry in the UK is pretty much given up as it cannot take on the lunatic in charge of the UK's energy policy, which is mad red Ed Miliband, a man with no knowledge of experience in the energy sector, who couldn't even wire an electric plug. Plus, he's a guy who lost a fight with a bacon sandwiches. Plus, the UK government have come up with a novel way for its pensioners to save money, and the government too. It took away the pensioners' winter fuel allowance, so tens of thousands of them will die with a cold. They'll not use energy, so that saves the government on energy. Plus, the government doesn't have to pay them pensions. Those who said Rachel Thieves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who masquerades as economy, was stupid or wrong. She's just stupid, wicked and vindictive, as she says on paying pensioners the winter fuel allowance, and the dead people who will not get a pension will never vote against her party. How clever's that? It seems that all Europe's problems are blamed on Vladimir Putin and Russia, and it's becoming pretty obvious that the East European countries are currently embracing nationalist ideologies, a development that Europe just can't ignore. And Russia's role in this is being magnified. I mean, even in Asia, Yoon Suk Yeol's unsuccessful imposition of martial law on South Korea was attributed at least part to Russia, given its alignment with North Korea. Allegedly, President Putin's influence is everywhere. A constant outpouring by state-sponsored media portrays President Putin as the most malevolent figure in history that makes Rasputin look like a kindly sort of fellow. I mean, the British Foreign Office has a dedicated propaganda unit, which you can see pretty much everywhere. I get them here. And everything is showing that it's countering Russian propaganda. Anything that Russia does is propaganda. I mean, defining an enemy is essentially in order to justify the propaganda campaign, and Europe's citizens are now forced to accept economic hardship, lower living standards, higher inflation, higher energy costs, and increased risk of nuclear annihilation to defeat Vladimir the Terrible, who's no threat at all. I mean, incidentally, Russia's not going to attack anybody. And it's Europe's leaders that are failing everybody with monotonous regularity. Since 2014, they've been tied to the US Democratic Party, focused on countering Russia's influence, and they want to destroy it, take over Russia's resources and turn the time back to when Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin was there. Now, the severance of economic ties between Europe and Russia has been self-destructive. In fact, the sanctions have been a boomerang on Europe. Its economic relations have made the nationalism, political tensions across Europe surge because people are unhappy with their living standards are being destroyed on a war against an enemy they don't see to support a country that they didn't really care about. I mean, peace was maintained in Europe because the warring countries sought to not go to war, strengthen economic ties, and have reasons for harmonious coexistence. Now the progressive and dangerous liberals have eroded the legacy of peace that was hard won. I mean, the greatest irony, although it's not surprising, is that the conflict in Europe has only benefited the US. I mean, the US efforts in 2014 were trying to stop Russia developing its new pipelines into Europe. I mean, they'd already just launched the Nord Stream 1, and that coincided with the American fracking. So Lindsey Graham, the Queen of Washington, fudge muncher, could you want the US to access trillions of dollars worth of minerals in the Ukraine and perhaps Russia. And he uses this as a justification for pumping billions of dollars worth of weapons into a losing campaign. Plus, Graham's pledged to take action against European economies that look to enforce the International Criminal Court arrest warrant against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, these double standards with attitude to the war on Vladimir Putin are glaringly obvious. Now, in my view, Donald John Trump may be marginally more an effective president of the US than given his potential for him to actually try and force a peace agreement. But it's obvious and evident that Trump's primary interest in Europe is limiting the expenditure of the US taxpayer money on the Ukraine. He's not interested in that. Now, he's also looked to impose tariffs of 10 to 20% on European goods to take decisive actions on any country that supports the development of BRICS currency. So Europe's shot itself in the foot. It's lost the Russian market for everything from agriculture and foods. And the situation in Europe is becoming unstable, and it's just self-destructive. Europe's were convinced that severing ties with Russia would guarantee their safety. In fact, all it's done is made sure that the likelihood of a conflict is more likely to happen. And the Europeans should look at the US as their enemy and not their friend. As Henry Kissinger once said, it's far more dangerous to be a friend of the United States than its enemy. And he was right. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. And if you want to help me out, click on the thanks button at the bottom of the screen. See you all again soon. Thank you.